Hey guys, welcome to Mitch's Music. Today we are going to talk about some of my guitar influences and just how they inspired me or influenced my playing, and just kind of talk about a couple of names that are some of my favorite guitarists that have influenced my playing over the years, and just kind of journey through some of those. And I would love for you to share any of your favorites. And then maybe in the comments, what we can do is just compile a list, because I always love to learn about new guitarists. Um, hey, how's it going? Yeah, I always love to learn about new guitarists, because you guys always have great recommendations for songs, and you always point me in a direction that I wouldn't have gone by myself. So that's great, and that's one of the things I wanted. I was hoping that maybe while watching this video, you will learn about a guitarist that you didn't know. So before I get into it, the my playing started. I love singing, and so my playing started as an accompaniment for singing. So my very first influences on guitar were people I was already listening to. So I was into country music for the most part. I was a born in the '80s, and grew up listening to late '80s, '90s country. So that's like Garth, Clint Black, Alan Jackson, people like that. And so when I first started playing, I wasn't listening for like, oh, I really want to learn a lot of leads. I was really just trying to accompany myself playing guitar, playing or singing. And so the first couple of things I learned were some Garth Brooks songs. And honestly, that way of picking, especially his slower songs, where you are and I don't really know the story. I don't know if Garth recorded a lot of his own stuff. I'm sure he had another guitarist. I know that in live he seems to play a lot, but he sort of has this picking pattern in his songs that's very James Taylor like. And so it's that pattern where you're like plucking strings and picking strings, and it just makes this kind of full almost sound. So like you're doing these arpeggios and stuff with your pick, but you're also plucking some strings at the same time, kind of like this. So you'll see a lot of the stuff that I play, that pattern is in there, and that to me is one of the biggest influences as far as playing altogether. When I started to learn those chordings, and I learned those patterns, um, and I didn't get into playing leads until a little bit later, and I was already a Diamond Rio fan before that. But I always loved the fact that they had such a unique sound, and so I started looking into their guitars. And if you don't know their guitarist, his name is Jimmy Olander, and that's my first introduction to B benders and G benders and that whole world of making your guitar sound like a steel guitar. And I'm not sure if you can really hear a lot of that Diamond Rio influence in my playing. I personally don't hear it. But I can tell you this is that Diamond Rio and Jimmy Olander, for sure, even if he doesn't influence my playing, he definitely influences the way that I think about tone. And the first time I ever heard Diamond Rio and their guitar sound. I love the tone. And so I'm not really a tone chaser, but I have for most of my life tried to get a tone that's kind of like his. I'm still not there yet, but I'm closer. So let me read some of these comments. So let's see. One of my first influences was Danny Cedrone, played guitar for the solo and Bill Haley's Rock Around. Ah, yeah. That's see that is where I need education. A lot of the ones that played on all of the earlier 50s records, I know some of the names, but I don't know all of them. And so, yeah, that is a great call. That's one that I don't think I've done Rock Around the Clock, but it's definitely been on my list of songs to do. And one thing before I forget it, when I was thinking about what I was going to talk about in this video, my influences in general, as far as a lead player, and why I tend to lean towards country as my favorite influences, is because I love the melodies that they create. I love the fact that they lean a little more towards jazz, especially in 90s country. I think about Brent Mason, who's another influence, and Alan Jackson's guitar player back in the day. Like it's so jazzy, and the way that they use their triple stops and things like that, double stops, that to just add this sort of depth. And it's a clearly defined melody. And Rock Around the Clock is a great example of like when rock still, like, you could listen to a song and you could hear what they were trying to do with the guitar. Whereas later on, I feel like a lot of rock solos got to where they were just trying to go and play as fast as they possibly could, not really a lot of melody to it. And so if you notice that I'm skipping something in a song, it's probably because I don't hear the melody in it. So if there's a solo that I ever leave out of one of my things, or a fill or whatever, it's probably because I feel like the guitarist was improvising and creating something in that moment. And so if you heard that again live, it would probably be completely different. And normally that type of stuff I don't touch. I like the things that are definite. You can tell that the guitarist had a developed idea in his head before he put it down on paper. And so my favorite guitarists like Jimmy Olander, Brent Mason, like working through a solo. If you are not on his Instagram channel, he does a lot of stuff, and just like watching him in the studio and how he talks through recording things and working on a solo is great. Let me read this other one. Hi, Mitch. Can you please do a little video on how to play by ear? Absolutely. I would love to do that. One trick with playing by ear and I can definitely do some videos on that. One trick with YouTube with that is one of the best ways to show you how to play by ear. I can talk through things sort of in theory about how to play by ear and give you some pointers. But one of the best ways to learn how to play by ear is to just do it and kind of see the process of how to go through that. And I would love to do that with you, but I've tried that several years ago. And because of YouTube's copyright issue, like their copyright deals, the best way for me to do it would be to play a song and kind of show you how I work through learning a song. But the second I do that, YouTube is going to cut that song out. And so I would love to do it, and I can talk through the theories of it, but I would have to figure out a way to do it to where everything that's in the video is still there. If you're just joining me at this point, please leave some of your favorite guitarists in the comments. I've already talked about a couple of mine. One of my biggest influence to begin with was the playing of Garth Brooks on his earlier albums. just the picking patterns. Talked about Diamond Rio's guitarist, Jimmy Olander. We talked about Brent Mason a little bit. One thing with Brent is I love his style. Some of the things that he does on his solo albums, I'm just not capable of doing because Brent's playing style is different. I don't know if you know this, but he uses a thumb pick, and his is almost like a banjo kind of style because he has a thumb pick, and that leaves these two fingers open to just do whatever he wants, and so it makes it a lot faster. Um, I have done some Charlie Pride before. I have done some Charlie Pride. I can't remember any off the top of my head. I think I did Kiss an Angel Good Morning. But yeah, I need to do some more. If you have one that you'd like to see, let me know. And then the other guitarist that I had in mind was Dwight Yoakam. Dwight Yoakam's guitarist, Pete Anderson. Huge influence. I would say as far as his playing, I can hear me when I try to create a lead. I would say that Pete Anderson influenced the way I improvise solo a little bit more than other guitarists. Mainly because to do a solo like Jimmy Olander, I just don't think that way. And so I would definitely say that Pete Anderson is a huge influence on my actual playing. And then sometime in 99, I had heard of a couple of the slow songs, right? And then I was driving down the road and I heard this song come on the radio called Me Neither. And I only knew Brad Paisley's slow stuff at the time. I don't think I had a Brad Paisley album yet. And I heard Me Neither, loved the idea of the song. And then the solo at the end, I was like, man, I've got to look up this guy. I've got to learn more about him. And although I would not say Brad is an influence, he's definitely a guitarist that I think single-handedly helped keep what 90s country was a little bit alive. Him and Keith Urban. I'm glad that those guys are still around because they are some guitar players that are frontmen, and you don't see that often. You used to have guys like Wade Hayes, that was a frontman guitarist, Clint Black, frontman guitarist, and you don't see that as much as you used to. Now you see a lot of singers up front, and you barely hear guitar solos. So I'm glad that those guys keep it alive. And so that's kind of it. Those, as far as rock solos, I have played a lot of rock in my life. Most of the bands I've been in are rock bands, but I don't feel like solo wise rock music, other than groups like the Ventures, like earlier groups in the 50s and 60s. I would say the Ventures, I love their stuff. They're some of the first things that I started learning when I played guitar. Love rockabilly in general. Brian Setzer, great guitarist. Love his stuff. And then you have to look back at Elvis and the guitarists that played for him. That style, always loved it. But other than that, like the other influences I've had are not necessarily guitarists. There's just a genre of music is Western swing has been a huge influence on me. I love hearing that stuff. I finally started learning how to play some of it a little bit later. But yeah, and then what I was going to say though is that rock music, I think that the thing that has influenced me from there is I don't take a lot away from the solos, but I do believe that there's a lot to be said for some of the songwriting that is in rock music. I think that there are some great songwriting things that have happened in rock that maybe hasn't happened as frequently in country, like more complex chord progressions and things like that. I mean, in the 90s country, I feel like the idea was to keep it simple with 3, 4, 5 chords maybe, so that these great guitarists could have something to solo over. It was more about what was on top of it, and then you had just great songwriters from pop and rock, that like Billy Joel. I love listening to his stuff. um you know, the Beatles, I think I've talked about those guys before. I feel like what is so great about them, and something I probably could never do, is that they just wrote, and they put everything on an album, like whether it was good or bad. They were not creating an album for you. I think they were creating an album for them. And that was cool to listen to. Let me read some of these comments. Let's see. Oh yeah, absolutely. Roy Clark, Chet Atkins, man, yeah, Chet Atkins. I I would love to play like Chet. I've tried to play some of his stuff. I have never been into the. Did not start fingerstyle, and I can do some of it. I'm a little bit more comfortable, I think, with the Merle Travis style than I am Chet. Chet's definitely a little bit more complicated than that. But yeah, Roy Clark, Albert Lee is another great one, that, Roy Clark's playing and how fast he was kind of reminds me of Albert Lee, and his playing. Let's see. Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Man, that there are so many great guitarists that were just, I don't know, I guess kind of lost to history in a way. um and that people just really don't talk about enough, like Scotty Moore, and all of those guys that were on the earlier 50s, 60s, 70s albums that were mainly made for a singer, rather than a band. Because we talk about band guitarists all the time. If you were a part of the Doors, or you were a part of all of these other different rock bands, you know those guitarists. But a lot of the studio guitarists, when you talk about the greatest guitarists that are most influential, they don't get talked about a lot. And but yeah, guys, I think I'm gonna have to wrap it up here. I've got to head out, but great discussion. Please, if you are watching this video later, then leave your favorite guitarist. I'd love to. I'm going to come back to this video and look at the comments. I'll see you guys here next week, Thursday, 11:15, same time. Let me know if you have something that you would like me to talk about. A great suggestion of some learning by ear stuff, and I will figure out a way to do that on here that is YouTube friendly. Great discussion today, guys. I'll see you next week in the next video, and please let me know if you have any requests. Have a great day.